Welcome to Classes in Session, presented by UI Health. I'm Doug Glanville. There is a deep love affair for college sports and the athletes that play them. Yet one of the most significant changes to the college sports landscape is shrouded in mystery: the transfer portal. Just hearing those words make us think of something NASA would be involved in. The transfer portal turns out to be a database, a list of college athletes that are testing the market in search of opportunity or leverage in the near future at a new institution. There are a variety of reasons why an athlete would enter the portal, and for those who will make it to the other side, they will be wearing a different uniform from when they went in, hoping the grass is greener on this new planet. In class today, we demystify the transfer portal that has empowered college athletes with the power of choice. We seek to understand its pluses and minuses and what its future looks like. We will do so with some amazing guests. Casey Muir, Senior Director of Football at Octagon, who represents athletes in college football with extensive experience helping athletes navigate the portal. Jewel Spear, college basketball star who recently came out of the portal and landed at the University of Tennessee for her senior year after a stellar career at Wake Forest University. And Bruce Feldman, senior college football writer at The Athletic and Fox Sports with over 2 decades of experience covering college athletics. Let's get to class. If you watch any sci-fi movie that focuses on space travel, there is often a portal, a way to instantly move from one place to another. Video games and movies celebrate such power, whether you imagined yourself as Captain Kirk from Star Trek or Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. It was in the realm of possibility that you could disappear and reappear exactly where you wanted to be. In 2018, the NCAA adopted the transfer portal to facilitate student-athlete movement between schools. In light speed, the portal has consistently evolved to the culture of the day. Name, image, and likeness has a hand in the portal's value as athletes weigh college options through more than just getting starter status, but through economics and market opportunity. When LSU landed national champion head coach Kim Mulkey from Baylor, it was a sweetener to know that LSU had a strong NIL presence which would be attractive to any prospective transfer. In women's sports, LSU has 4 out of the top 10 NIL earners, 3 of which are on the basketball team. Players no longer have to sit out a year when they transfer. In the backdrop of the 2021 portal explosion, nearly 10,000 athletes between undergrads and grad students rocketed through the portal. The coaches still must recruit from this database of talent. Scholarship status still has to be considered. In the notable case of Colorado football under head coach Deion Coach Prime Sanders, it became an exercise in portal policy. Tens of Colorado football players were floating in the portal, many of which were recommended to do so since they were likely to be cut with the overhaul Sanders promised was coming to Boulder. It underscored the shifting power dynamics of the portal, where players who committed to a university and saw it as a long-term commitment all of a sudden were faced with a stay and don't play football option or start over somewhere else. It is only a matter of time when the empowerment of the student-athlete collides with the drawback of a saturated free market. The uncertainty, the waiting, the way the portal can be a repository for players who are cut after a corporate team takeover. Business 101. Regardless, the portal is here to stay, heating up while adding another exciting season to the college sports landscape, the portal season. We all still must worry about missing the lesson of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun and soon found out his wings were only as good as the environment he was in. Athletes know this feeling all too well, and now they will transfer to find it. Let's welcome in our next guest, Bruce Feldman, a senior writer at The Athletic and also a reporter with Fox Sports on college football. Bruce, thank you for joining us.
It's good to be on with you.
Well, Bruce, I want to jump right in on the concept and the actual execution of the transfer portal. But we know that college football, or just sports in college in general, are very much impacted by this process that started in 2018. So can you give us a sort of a state of the union on what the transfer portal is and what's happening in 2023?
Yeah, I think for a lot of schools, there's a roster management component with college football, especially where they're trying to juggle and plan ahead, because unlike maybe college basketball, college football, especially as a developmental you can't be short on offensive linemen, or you can't be short on a given position. And I think early on, and when I say early on, we're talking, that 2018, 2019 window, where you had a few players who come in, and the biggest example of this would be everyone is looking for their Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was a guy at Ohio State who didn't really play. He was a backup. He lost the starting job. They chose to go with Dwayne Haskins over him. He had graduated from Ohio State, was a really good student, ended up going in the transfer portal. LSU took him, gave him a chance, and he turned out to be arguably the greatest player LSU has ever had in its storied history. And he led them to a national title. And so a lot of programs are hoping they will find somebody else. And it's for the 17, 18, 19-year-old, that can be a really attractive process. Then you add into this after the early stages of NIL, which we're talking early stages of the transfer portal. Once you got into the NIL era a couple of years ago, when that came in, where now there's real money that is attached to the recruiting process. And hey, can I go here and get a 6-figure deal, as opposed to the other place that maybe doesn't have the NIL support? And I think it is a fascinating time to be around college athletics right now.
So Bruce, let's just compare sort of a little bit of the before and after. The transfer portal was created to address what, and is it acting or sort of behaving as intended? So what was the original impetus to say we need this portal or need some sort of a new system to deal with the transferring between schools and school?
I think, Doug, you look at the maybe hypocrisy that goes on with college athletics. Coaches can talk about commitment and finish and all these kind of mantras that they have in their programs, and yet they could turn around and go to some other school and not be punished. Then all of a sudden it became a different level of quote unquote free agency. And I think that was a big change. And then it became a little bit of be careful what you wish for, right? Because I think a lot of folks watching this go, you know what? The players who were not getting paid, they were getting compensated, certainly with degrees and, in pursuit of degree and the opportunities, but also they're realistically, a lot of them are working way more than 40 hours in their sport for that and all the demands that come with it. So I think a lot of people looked at it on the outside in going, why should the players not have the opportunities to move?
And within some of the cautionary tales or just the shifting of power or the vying for power, there's Deion Sanders, Coach Prime at Colorado, who kind of used the portal in a way that is unprecedented, right? They had, tens of players enter, record-setting number of scholarship players, and a lot of it, term I hadn't really heard before, which is these guys got cut effectively, right? They were getting cut, and some were recommended to go into the portal. What do you make of, this situation with Deion Sanders in Colorado? Is it, is it a cautionary tale? I mean, what's your sort of perspective on that?
It is really fascinating because, for one, first of all, there is no coach in college football anything like Deion Sanders in terms of he's an iconic former football player. He has a level of charisma that is a gulf between him and every other guy who's on the sidelines. So when he does a Zoom with a player and their families, the reaction they're at least going to say, hey, I want to check out Colorado and see what's going on with Deion. He's just way different than everybody else who he's going up against. The core of this is he took over a program that has been awful for a long time in Colorado. They won one game last year. They had bottomed out. And the fact that he thought, you know what, I'm going to gut the roster, and there are rules that enable you now to essentially cut players. I mean, if they want to stay in the program and not play, or stay at the school and not play, that's another thing. It's not like you can entirely kick them to the curb. But I think there was a lot of players who were hoping to stay, and then at the end of spring they realized we're not in his plans.
Well, what do you think, looking ahead as it's continuing to evolve in this portal? What do you think's next? I mean, what do you think they're going to try to address next to try to improve the system and address some of the concerns that are popping up?
I think they're going to, if they can get a case where they can make a big statement that, go hard at somebody who they think they caught in tampering, I think they're going to feel compelled to try to do that, because that is such a hot button issue. I think that, buttoning up the times of when players can transfer from a roster management piece is a big thing. I also think it's a big thing as it relates to NIL in terms of how it's used in recruiting. Because you got to remember, it's not just the investment, it's also the pressure that those players are now going to have.
Well, Bruce, I mean, really incredible to shed light on what is the transfer portal. Thank you for taking the time today to share that information.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be on with you, Doug.
We continue our deep dive into the transfer portal with Tennessee's Jewel Spear next on Classes in Session with Doug Glanville, presented by UI Health. Welcome back to Classes in Session with Doug Glanville, presented by UI Health. We are very fortunate to have our next guest, Jewel Spear, an athlete who has recently transferred through the portal to the University of Tennessee after 3 excellent years at Wake Forest University. A star guard who's playing at many different levels and was the top scorer her sophomore year in the ACC at Wake Forest. So Jewel, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I guess my first start is what sparked you to even enter the portal? And I guess give us some background of that experience.
Yeah, so I'd say what sparked me to enter the portal is just after every year with my family, especially my dad, I like to evaluate my game and evaluate the season and just evaluate how I did individually, but also as a team. And I think weighing the pros of staying at Wake Forest where I was, which is a great school. I had nothing negative to say about it, but I weighed the pros of staying at Wake versus the pros of leaving to a bigger school, which I aspired to do. And the pros outweighed leaving. So that is what sparked me to enter the transfer portal.
Well, I appreciate, how you looked at it. It was very positive, right? Pro and pro. I guess what was the hardest thing about, talking to your Wake Forest family, so to speak, about choosing to leave?
Yeah, so it was very hard. Telling my teammates and my coaches was very hard. I felt a lot of emotions. I was sad at times because I knew I had great relationships with my new coaches, from my head coach to assistant coaches to support staff, as well as my teammates who I spent a lot of time with and created really good bonds with. I felt excited also because it's a new journey. It was something that I felt was right for me. I felt it was time to spread my wings, develop, be uncomfortable, and just be ready to take the next step in my life. But it was also very, I can say, overwhelming at times. Right when I entered the portal, there was a lot of teams, coaches that were calling me. I got voicemails, messages, emails, you name it. But I think even though it was overwhelming, I was very grateful and blessed to just see that there's other schools and other programs that value what I do on the court, but who I am as a person off the court.
Well, there's one thing I always marvel at, even when NIL came onto the scene, and I definitely want to talk about that a little bit. But one word that always comes to mind is loyalty. How do you grapple with, the spirit of, okay, I'm here I am, and this is my team, and sink or swim, versus the fact that your career is so short and you're looking towards a future that any athlete knows is not going to be something that you do forever. It's something that you have to capitalize in a moment.
Yeah, loyalty is a word that I value and I don't take lightly. It was hard leaving Wake Forest. That was one thing that stuck with me. It's like, I've been here for 3 years. I've been loyal to this program. I knew what Wake did for me coming out of high school, believing in me when, many other programs did not. I just feel like it was a decision, like I said, that I thought it is best for me and my future. And I believe, coaches get to leave whenever they feel it's right for them. And I feel like players should be able to as well, without so much scrutiny.
Yeah. Well, and Jewel, talking about the pros, you mentioned the pros. Could you give us a sense of, some of those elements that you see at University of Tennessee that you're really excited about? I mean, NIL, or, what are the elements that say this is a great opportunity for you?
I would say it's a bigger stage in the sense of the SEC. Tennessee's will be playing South Carolina, the LSU's, Ole Miss, and so forth. I'll be able to see different competition, different playing styles, different coaching styles. I think another thing that factored in is just connections. I value connections and relationships. I want to do sports broadcasting or be a sports analyst. And they have the pieces and alums that were there. Tamika Catchings, Candace Parker, Andrea Carter, Carolyn Peck. And I really value those connections. And I think being a Lady Ball will help me when the ball stops bouncing.
Well, and having this experience, going through the portal, what kind of advice have you been able to gain from it to be able to pass on to other athletes?
Yeah, I would say the advice I would give to people is be educated in your decision. Don't do something because other people are telling you to do it. Do what's right for you and your future and what you believe is right, no matter if you're judged for it or not. If you know you have the right people around you, your family, your friends, your former teammates, your future teammates, then you'll be set.
Well, Jewel, I really want to appreciate you taking the time today and giving us more insight on how the portal works. It always sounds so mysterious, but I think you kind of gave us a lot more clarity about how it works and the real human elements about what's really behind it. So I wish you continued success, and I look forward to your season coming up.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, an agent's perspective on NIL and student-athlete movement with Octagon's Casey Muir, next on Classes in Session with Doug Glanville, presented by UI Health. Welcome back to Classes in Session with Doug Glanville, presented by UI Health. Excited for our next guest here on Classes in Session, Casey Muir, Senior Director of Football at Octagon, where he represents a whole host of athletes looking to play at the next level or at the next school. Casey, welcome.
Appreciate it, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Your role is to educate clients. You're sharing with them insights about their future and how to best achieve it. What is your process by which educating athletes about the portal? Where do you start and how do you teach about it?
Yeah, so for us, you have to start with the realization that pretty much every single one of these college football players, their goal is to play in the NFL. So with that being the case, we are constantly, whenever a player wants to discuss potentially entering the transfer portal, you really have to know the landscape. What schools are going to have interest in you? What are their depth charts? Are you going to walk in, have the opportunity to legitimately play or start? Are you going to play more than you were at your current school? I think there's a lot of factors that really have to weigh into those decisions. And, I think every single player has to evaluate their own situation a little bit differently. Players really have to be honest with themselves about where they're at and what their goals are, and then hopefully find a school that fits those goals for them. And in addition to that, you also have to take into account, does the school that you're interested in have interest in you? NIL comes into play. And what are they offering you from an NIL standpoint to come play there?
Yeah, and so if you're talking to a client and, let's just say you're starting from the beginning and they're saying, hey, I have these professional aspirations. What has been the biggest misconception that clients have about the portal in terms of okay, I can just enter it? What do they kind of assume about it that may or may not be true?
First of all, whenever we think about players entering the transfer portal, I would say the overwhelming majority of players before they go into the transfer portal have a very good idea of what school they're really interested in and what schools have interest in them. The reality is, schools are back channeling with agents, with high school coaches, with 7-on-7 coaches constantly. And, we've seen it evolve where every single major college football program in the country really is building out scouting departments, and they are evaluating where the gaps in their rosters are going to be a year out.
You mentioned earlier NIL, and this is no question a game changer. What specifically has it done to the transfer portal in terms of how you weigh these options?
Man, I think NIL has really changed everything, because what we've really created here is a system of free agency every single year in college football. So the NIL piece, I think, really complicates that for coaches, because they have other schools coming in and saying to star players, certainly group of 5 players, Power 5 coaches coming in and saying, hey, you can start at our school and we'll pay you 6 figures to do it. From the player's perspective, look, the reality is only about 1.6% of all college football players get drafted. So some of these guys need to make as much money as they can now and use their name, image, and likeness to do that. So whenever some schools are offering them large sums of money to come play football there, that can be a hard thing to pass up. And, we've all heard the rumors. I have certainly seen contracts, NIL offers extended that range in the 7-figure range for certain players in the transfer portal.
I guess if you were predictive about it, do you think, what's the next iteration, I guess, of the portal? Where do you think it's going to go from here?
Man, I think the combination of the portal and NIL are changing so rapidly right now. I view this in the prism of NIL, right? Because I think NIL is really driving the boat here in a lot of these things. And when you look around to the various states who are rapidly rewriting all of their NIL laws to benefit the schools in their specific states. And I really think this is not going to end until we kind of have some kind of national legislation. And it covers NIL, it'll cover the transfer portal.
Yes, well, Casey Muir, I really appreciate you taking the time today and enlightening us on what is the transfer portal, and your insights have been tremendously valuable. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys.
The transfer portal has been a significant step in granting college athletes the freedom to reevaluate their circumstances. Not only does this address a player's desire to enter a new program, but it is a reset on an athlete's value in the robust marketplace of NIL. Given the low odds that an athlete will have a long, lucrative professional career, the time is now for college athletes to draw on the widest range of interested parties, each year a new chance to be seen and compensated. In this dynamic, the debate over loyalty is raised as no flag is planted deep enough to declare permanence to a program. This was long true in the coaching realms, as many left for greener pastures or simply for green. Now the players are embracing the role as temporary fixtures, here now in full team colors, gone tomorrow in rival colors. All is fair. Yet in the end, there is no going back. For once someone tastes freedom, they will never lose that desire to make that taste permanent. The portal has been opened forever. I'm Doug Glanville. See you next time.